how will Democrats replace Joe Biden at the top of the ticket? Now that President Joe Biden has withdrawn from the presidential race, the question facing the Democratic Party is no longer whether he can be replaced at the top of the ticket, it is how they're going to go about it. And most importantly, who replaces Biden. The process is complicated. It could lead to political upheaval between now and August, when the Democratic Convention happens in Chicago. At the convention, the Democratic Party's delegates, almost 4,000 of them, will choose who their official nominee is to take on Donald Trump in November.
Friends, most of us agree. In a real leader, character matters more than style. And Donald Trump simply does not have the character to be President of the United States.
Biden has already endorsed his deputy and his number two, his running mate on the top of the Democratic ticket, Vice President Kamala Harris. But that does not mean that she automatically becomes the Democratic nominee, although it does put her well above the rest of the pack. Biden's endorsement will certainly persuade a large number of his delegates to vote for Harris as the official nominee. But it's also possible that a good number of delegates will be free to vote for whomever they choose to vote for. That could lead to an open convention, which is quite a rarity in modern-day American politics. So, now what? What happens next? There is really no clear answer to that question, but there appears to be two ways this can now go. First, the party could rally around Kamala Harris, who is the vice president, as a unifying force during what is clearly a time of crisis for the Democratic Party. That would be the easiest road to take, both politically and legally. Kamala Harris has been vetted, she's well known among Democrats, she's on top of the Biden-Harris ticket. She's run a national campaign before, so there's no need for reintroducing her to a national audience. And, most importantly, she could take over the Biden-Harris campaign apparatus and its bank account. She has, among others, the endorsement of incumbent President Biden, and that's a big plus. Also, she has the endorsement of potential competitors in the Democratic Party, including Governors Gavin Newsom of California and Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania. Another potential competitor for the ticket is Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan, who has said that she will not fight against Kamala Harris. Former President Bill Clinton and his wife, former presidential candidate Hillary Clinton, both have endorsed Harris. But there are some notable Democratic biggies who have not endorsed her. That includes former President Barack Obama and his wife Michelle Obama, as well as the current congressional leadership, which includes former Speaker Nancy Pelosi and leaders of the Senate and the House, Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries of the Democratic Party. Now, some Democrats have argued that anointing a candidate is risky, and they say that the party would be better off with some kind of a competition, a more democratic election process. That would require that at least one other candidate gets in the race for who gets to be the Democratic nominee. If that happens, there could be party-sanctioned forums across the country. Candidates will be questioned by a moderator. That will be telecast before a national TV and online audience. Short of that, the candidates could also embark on a month-long campaign between now and middle of August before the convention, jet-setting across the country to try and solicit the support of delegates. Which Democrats might jump into the race to take on Kamala Harris? Like I said, the key person to watch is Kamala Harris. The question is if she becomes the consensus choice of all the Democrat delegates. She's managed a big coup by getting President Biden's endorsement. Whether or not this will force all the other Democratic faithful to follow suit, that is the critical question. Potential competitors who've got White House ambitions will have a big decision to make. Would they want to challenge her because that could be seen as a risky maneuver? It could lead to damaging intra-party divisions. Or should they stand aside in the name of Democratic unity? So who then could Kamala Harris choose as a running mate to be the vice presidential nominee? The Democratic Party now has a very deep bench. Among the potential candidates are a handful of governors, Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan, Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, Gavin Newsom of California, J.B. Pritzker of Illinois, and Andy Beshear of Kentucky. Other potential candidates include Pete Buttigieg, who's the Secretary of Transportation, also ran unsuccessfully 4 years ago to get the Democratic Party's nomination. Also, Senators Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota and Cory Booker of New Jersey. Any one of them could be chosen as Harris's running mate. But given that Harris is a woman of color, her running mate will almost certainly have to be a white man, potentially from one of the swing states in the Midwest. Right now, Kamala Harris trails Donald Trump in all of the 6 swing states. What do the polls say? The polls say that out of 8 polls, 4 polls, Kamala Harris is polling slightly better than Biden against Trump. 4 other polls are showing that Biden is polling better than Harris against Trump, which means it's a virtual dead heat. Right now, in all of the 6 swing states, which includes 3 critical Midwestern states, which is Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, 3 states which Biden won in 2020, and it's going to be absolutely critical for any Democratic nominee to win those 3 states if they have to beat Trump. Right now, Harris is trailing Trump anywhere between 1.5 to 3 percentage points. Can Biden dictate his successor? President Biden can certainly recommend what his delegates should do. Right now, the Democratic Convention has close to 4,000 delegates. Any nominee would need to secure more than 1,960 odd delegates, which is half the number. Anyone who gets a majority becomes the nominee, who will officially take on Trump and Vance in November. Considering Joe Biden's standing in the Democratic Party, he carries a lot of sway. Not just the fact that he's the incumbent president, but also he's done something which is a rarity in modern-day American politics, which is to give up a nomination. But Biden does not control the delegates. He cannot tell them who to vote for and who not to vote for next month at the convention. And party politics being what it is, they are most likely to go with whoever they think has the best chance to defeat Trump in November. If the Democrats fail to rally behind Harris, if Harris does not become the consensus candidate, then we could see something that is fairly unprecedented in politics in the US, at least something that's not happened in over 50 years. An open convention where candidates fight it out for the votes of delegates. That, of course, would lead to lots of political jockeying, confusion, even uncertainty, both in the run-up to and during the convention. It is something that Democrats will try and avoid as hard as possible. The last time there was an open convention, that was back in 1968, when then President Lyndon Johnson decided not to run. Eventually, the party picked his vice president, Hubert Humphrey, as the party's official candidate. Eventually, Hubert Humphrey lost to Richard Nixon of the Republican Party in the 1968 election. What about all the money that's been raised by the Biden-Harris campaign? Biden and Harris have collected hundreds of millions of dollars in campaign funds over the last couple of years. That money has been allocated to the Biden campaign, to the Democratic National Committee, which will host the convention in August, and also to various Democratic organizations across various states in the US. As of the end of June, those organizations, that's the campaign, the DNC, as well as all other Democratic affiliates statewide, had a combined $240 million in cash on hand. Most of that money could be pressed into service on behalf of whoever the next candidate is. There is one big exception, which is the Biden-Harris campaign, which is separate from the entire pot of money, has, as of the 30th of May, about $90 million. If Harris becomes the candidate, that money, $90 million, is hers. If it is another candidate, then the Biden-Harris money could be returned either to the donors who gave it, which is highly unlikely, or it could be transferred to a federal super PAC, which could then spend it on behalf of whoever the nominee is. How much time does the Democratic Party have to settle this issue, the question of leadership? Democrats gather in Chicago on the 19th of August. That's where they will nominate who the official nominee is. The nominee is scheduled to deliver what is called the acceptance speech on the final night of the convention, which is the 22nd of August. The party sets the rules and nothing is cast in stone, but this issue of who is going to be the official candidate needs to be settled by the 22nd of August. There's one more complication. The Democratic National Committee has been pushing for an earlier virtual vote in the hope of settling any doubts about Biden before the official vote happens in August during the convention. they want this virtual roll call to happen either in the last week of July or in early August. That now will most likely not happen. And the final endorsement will come at the convention in the middle of August. If Kamala Harris indeed wins the nomination, and there's a 1 in 2 chance that she will become the first woman and person of color to be nominated as a major party candidate in a presidential race.